Blessed love and peace in Rastafari. This is a recitation of Toba di Kokadao, Torah, Bhagavad Gita, Diganakaya, Dhammapada, Gospels, Quran, Tao Te Ching. This is portion numero 52, which is Vayelech, which includes from Torah, Parsha Vayelech, which is Devarim 31:1 a 31:30, from the Kata Upanishad, the concluding chapter 6, or part 2, chapter 3, of the Kata Upanishad. From the Bhagavad Gita, it is the Deva Sura Sampad Vibhaga Yogahe, which is numero 16. From the Tao Te Ching, it is chapter 76 and 77. From the Doctrine of the Mean, it is part 4 in our sequence, which is verse 20 a 28. From the Diganakaya, it is the Dasutara Sutta, numero 34, chapter 1. From the Dhammapada, it is the Bhikshu Vaga, numero 25. From Gospels, it is Acts, chapters 22 a 24. From the Quran, it is Surah Al-Qadr, Surah Al-Bayyina, Surah Al-Zilzal, Surah Al-Adiyat, Surah Al-Qariya, Surah At-Takatur, which are surahs 97 a 102. And from the Tanakh, it is the book of Yehoshua, chapters 19 a 21. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Allah wabha. Dao ke dao fei cheng dao min ke min fei cheng min. Ja Rastafari. Deus noster qui es in cielo sanctificator nomen tuum. Vaheguru sanam. Baruch ata Elohim Eloheinu melech haolam asher kezanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivan l'sok b'davai Torah. Amen. Baruch ata Elohim Eloheinu melech haolam borei b'riah gafem. Amen. Kyrie eleison, sivamas tu save jigatahim, save sata bhavantu sukhitatam. Vagabiyam. Aquaba upendo na amani, fikiri na salami, cinta dam peramean, libov mem, umanjika. Ubuntu shabona fakitka. Shishe, kamosanida, domo arigato, piloma yellow walk and toko toku shingu and go God. God, we thank you for all that you bless us. Ata jam yat afanami. Bado. Aho, Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Amen. Torah Vayelech Devarim 31:1 a 31:30. And Moshe went and he spoke the following words to all Israel. He said to them, "Today I am 120 years old. I can no longer go or come." And Elohim said to me, "You shall not cross this Jordan. Elohim your God, Elohim will cross before you. Elohim will destroy these nations from before you, so that you will possess them. Yehoshua will cross before you, as Elohim has spoken. And Elohim will do to them as Elohim did to the Amorite kings, Sichon and Og, and to their land, all of which Elohim destroyed. And when Elohim delivers them before you, you shall do to them according to all the commandment that I have commanded you. Be strong and courageous, neither fear nor be dismayed of them, for Elohim your God, Elohim is the one who goes with you. Elohim will never fail you, neither fail you nor forsake you." And Moshe called Yehoshua and said to him in the presence of all Israel, "Be strong and courageous, for you shall come with this people to the land which Elohim swore to their forefathers to give them, and you shall apportion it to them as an inheritance. Elohim is the one who goes before you. Elohim will be with you. Elohim will neither fail you nor forsake you. Do not fear and do not be dismayed." Then Moshe wrote this Torah and gave it to the priests the descendants of Levi, who carried the Ark of the Covenant of Elohim, and to all the elders of Israel. Then Moshe commanded them, saying, at the end of every 7 years, at an appointed time, in the festival of Sukkot, after the year of release, when all Israel comes to appear before Elohim your God, in the place Elohim will choose, you shall read this Torah before all Israel in their ears. Assemble the people, the men, the women, and the children, and your stranger in your cities, in order that they hear, and in order that they learn and fear Elohim your God, and they will observe to do all the words of this Torah. And their children who did not know will hear and learn to fear Elohim your God all the days that you live on the land to which you are crossing the Jordan to possess. And Elohim said to Moshe, behold, your days are approaching for you to die. Call Yehoshua and stand in the tent of meeting, and I will inspire him. So Moshe and Yehoshua went and stood in the tent of meeting, and Elohim appeared in the tent in a pillar of cloud. The pillar of cloud stood at the entrance to the tent. And Elohim said to Moshe, behold, you are about to lie with your forefathers, and this nation will rise up and stray after the deities of the nations of the land into which they are coming, and they will forsake me and violate my covenant which I made with them. And my fury will rage against them on that day, and I will abandon them and hide my face from them, and they will be consumed, and many evils and troubles will befall them, and they will say on that day, is it not because our God is no longer amongst us that these evils have befallen us? And I will hide my face on that day because of all the evil they have committed when they turned to other deities. And now write for yourself this song and teach it to the children of Israel. Place it into their mouths, in order that this song will be for me as a witness for the children of Israel. When I bring them to the land which I have sworn to their forefathers to give them, a land flowing with milk and honey, they will eat and be satisfied, and live on the fat of the land. Then they will turn to other deities and serve them, provoking me and violating my covenant. And it will be when they will enter many evils and troubles, this song will bear witness against them, for it will not be forgotten from the mouth of their offspring. For I know their inclination, what they are planning to do today, even before I bring them into the land which I have sworn to give them. And Moshe wrote this song on that day and taught it to the children of Israel. And Elohim commanded Yehoshua the son of Nun and said, be strong and courageous, for you shall bring the children of Israel to the land that I have sworn to them, and I will be with you. And it was when Moshe finished writing the words of this Torah in a scroll until their very completion, that Moshe commanded the Levites who carried the Ark of the Covenant of Elohim, saying, take this Torah scroll and place it alongside the Ark of Covenant of Elohim, your God, and it will be there as a witness. For I know your rebellious spirit and your stubbornness. Even whilst I am alive with you today, you are rebelling against Elohim, and surely after my death. Assemble to me all the elders of your tribes and your officers, and I will speak these words into their ears, and I will call upon the heaven and the earth as witnesses against them. For I know that after my death you will surely become corrupted, and deviate from the way which I had commanded you. Consequently, the evil will befall you at the end of days, because you did evil in the eyes of Elohim, to provoke Elohim's anger through the work of your hands. Then Moshe spoke into the ears of the entire assembly of Israel the words of the following song until their completion. The Katha Upanishad, Part 2, Chapter 3, or Chapter 3. This is that eternal Ashvata tree with its root above and branches below. That root indeed is called the bright, that is Brahman, and that alone is the eternal living. In that all worlds are contained, and none can pass beyond. This verily is that. Whatever there is, the whole universe vibrates because it has gone forth from Brahman, which exists as its ground. That Brahman is a great terror, like a posed thunderbolt. Those who know it become eternal living. From terror of Brahman, fire burns. From terror of it, the soil shines. From terror of it, Indra and Vayu and death, the fifth, run. If a man is able to realize Brahman here before the falling asunder of his body, then he is liberated. If not, he is embodied again in the created worlds. As in a mirror, so in the buddhi. As in a dream, so in the world of the Fars. As in water, so Brahman is seen in the world of the Gandharvas. As in light and shade, so in the world of Brahma. Having understood that the senses have their separate origins, and that they are distinct from Atman, and also that their rising and setting belong to them alone, a wise man grieves no further. Beyond the senses is the mind, beyond the mind is the intellect, higher than the intellect is the great Atman, higher than the great Atman is the unmanifest. Beyond the unmanifest is the being, all-pervading and imperceptible. Having realized Atman, the embodied self becomes liberated and attains eternal life. Atman's form is not an object of vision. No one beholds the Atman with the eye. No one can know the Atman when the Atman is revealed by the intellect, free from doubt and by constant meditation. Those who know this become eternal living. When the five instruments of knowledge stand still together with the mind, and when the intellect does not move, that is called the supreme state. This, the firm control of the senses, is what is called yoga. One must then be vigilant, for yoga can be both beneficial and injurious. Atman cannot be attained by speech, by the mind, or by the eye. How can it be realized in any other way than by the affirmation of him who says, Atman is? Atman is to be realized first as existence limited by upadhis, and then in Atman's true transcendental nature. Of these two aspects, Atman realized as existence leads the knower to the realization of Atman's true nature. When all the desires that dwell in the heart fall away, then the living being becomes eternal living, and here attains Brahman. When all the ties of the heart are severed here on earth, then the living being becomes eternal living. This much alone is the teaching. There are 101 arteries of the heart, one of which pierces the crown of the head. Going upwards by it, a man at death attains eternal life. But when his prana passes out by other arteries going in different directions, then he is reborn in the world. The Purusha, not larger than a thumb, the inner self, always dwells in the hearts of men. Let a man separate the Atman from his body with steadfastness, as one separates the tender stalk from a blade of grass. Let him know that self as the bright, as the eternal living, yea, as the bright, as the eternal living. Having received this wisdom taught by the king of death and the entire process of yoga, Nachiketa became free from impurities in death and attained Brahman. Thus it will be also with any other who knows in this manner the inmost self. The Bhagavad Gita, Devasura Sampad Vibhaga Yogahe, número 16. Sri Krishna says, fearlessness, purity of heart, steadfastness in knowledge and yoga, charity, self-control, and offering, study of the scriptures, austerity and uprightness, non-violence, truth and freedom from anger, renunciation, tranquility, and aversion to slander, compassion to beings and freedom from covetousness, gentleness, modesty, and absence of fickleness, courage, forgiveness, and fortitude, purity, and freedom from malice and overweening pride. These belong to him who is born with divine treasures. Ostentatious arrogance and self-conceit, anger, rudeness, and ignorance, these belong to him who is born to the heritage of the demons. The sacred treasures are said to be for the purpose of liberation, and the heritage of the demons for bondage. Grieve not, O Pandava, you are born with sacred treasures. There are two types of beings created in this world, the sacred and the demoniac. The sacred have been described at length. Hear now from me, O Partha, concerning the demoniac. Men of demoniac nature know not what to do and what to refrain from doing. Purity is not in them, nor benevolent conduct, nor truth. They say the world is devoid of truth, without a virtuous basis, and without a God. It is brought about by the union of male and female, and lust alone is its cause. What else? Holding such a view, these lost souls of little understanding and fierce deeds rise as the enemies of the world for its destruction. Giving themselves up to insatiable desires full of hypocrisy, pride, and arrogance, they hold false views through delusion and act with impure resolve. Beset with innumerable cares which will end only with death, looking on the gratification of desire as their highest goal, and feeling sure that this is all, bound by 100 ties of hope, given up wholly to lust and wrath, they strive by unjust means to amass wealth for the satisfaction of their passions. This I have gained today, and that longing I will fulfill. This wealth is mine, and that also shall be mine in future. The enemy I have slain, and others too I will slay. I am the master of all. I enjoy, I am prosperous, mighty, and happy. I am rich, I am of high birth. Who else is equal to me? I will offer sacrifices, I will give, I will rejoice. Thus deluded by ignorance, bewildered by many fancies, entangled in the meshes of delusion, addicted to the gratification of lust, they fall into a loathsome hell. Self-honored, haughty, filled with the pride and the intoxication of wealth, they ostentatiously perform offerings which are so only in name, in utter disregard of precepts. Possessed of egotism, power, and pride, and also of lust and wrath, these people, envious by nature, hate me in the bodies of others and in their own. These cruel haters, these evildoers, these vilest of men, I hurl always into the wombs of the demons in the cycle of births and deaths. Having fallen into the wombs of the demons and being deluded from birth to birth, they never attain me, O son of Kunti, but go further down to the lowest state. 3 are the gateways of this hell, leading to the ruin of the self: lust, wrath, and greed. Therefore let man renounce these 3. The man who has escaped these 3 gates of darkness, O son of Kunti, practices what is benevolent for himself, and thus attains the supreme goal. He who discards the injunctions of the scriptures and acts upon the impulse of desire attains neither perfection nor happiness nor the supreme goal. Therefore let the scriptures be your authority in determining what ought to be done and what ought not to be done. Having learned the injunctions of the scriptures, you should do your work in the world. Tao Te Ching, chapter 76 and 77. 76. Whilst alive, the body is soft and pliant. When dead, it is hard and rigid. All living things, grass and trees, whilst alive, are soft and supple. When dead, become dry and brittle. Thus, that which is hard and stiff is the follower of death. That which is soft and yielding is the follower of life. Therefore, an inflexible army will not win. A strong tree will not be cut down. The big and forceful occupy a lowly position, whilst the soft and pliant occupy a higher place. The Tao of heaven is like drawing a bow. Lower that which is high, raise that which is low, reduce that which has excess. Tao Te Ching, chapter 77. The Tao of heaven is like drawing a bow. Lower that which is high, raise that which is low, reduce that which has excess, add to that which is lacking. The Tao of heaven reduces the excessive and adds to the lacking. The Tao of people is not so. It reduces the lacking in order to offer to the excessive. Who can offer their excess to the world? Only those who are of the Tao. Therefore, sages act without conceit, achieve without claiming credit. They do not wish to display their virtue. Doctrine of the Mean, verse 20 a 28. The Duke Ai asks about government. The master says, the government of Wen and Wu is displayed in the records, the tablets of wood and bamboo. Let there be the men, and the government will flourish, but without the men, their government decays and ceases. With the right men, the growth of government is rapid, just as vegetation is rapid in the earth, and further their government might be called an easily growing rush. Therefore the administration of government lies in getting proper men. Such men are to be got by means of the ruler's own character. That character is to be cultivated by his treading in the ways of duty. And the treading those ways of duty is to be cultivated by the cherishing of benevolence. Benevolence is the characteristic element of humanity, and the great exercise of it is in loving relatives. Righteousness is the accordance of actions with what is right, and the great exercise of it is in honoring the worthy. The decreasing measures of the love due to relatives and the steps in honor due to the worthy are produced by the principle of propriety. When those in inferior situations do not possess the confidence of their superiors, they cannot retain the government of the people. Hence the sovereign may not neglect the cultivation of his own character. Wishing to cultivate his character, he may not neglect to serve his parents. In order to serve his parents, he may not neglect to acquire knowledge of men. In order to know men, he may not dispense with a knowledge of heaven. The duties of universal obligation are 5, and the virtues wherewith they are practiced are 3. The duties of those between sovereign and minister, between father and son, between husband and wife, between elder brother and younger, and those belonging to the intercourse of friends. Those 5 are the duties of universal obligation: knowledge, magnanimity, and energy. These 3 are the virtues universally binding. And the means by which they carry the duties into practice is singleness. Some are born with the knowledge of those duties, some know them by study, and some acquire the knowledge after a painful feeling of their ignorance. But the knowledge being possessed, it comes to the same thing. Some practice them with a natural ease, some from a desire for their advantages, and some by strenuous effort. But the achievement being made, it comes to the same thing. The master says, to be fond of learning is to be near to knowledge. To practice with vigor is to be near to magnanimity. To possess the feeling of shame is to be near to energy. He who knows these 3 things knows how to cultivate his own character. Knowing how to cultivate his own character, he knows how to govern other men. Knowing how to govern other men, he knows how to govern the kingdom with all its states and families. All who have the government of the kingdom with its states and families have 9 standard rules to follow: the cultivation of their own characters, the honoring of men of virtue and talents, affection towards their relatives, respect towards the great ministers, kind and considerate treatment of the whole body of officers, dealing with the mass of the people as children, encouraging the resort of all classes of artisans, indulgent treatment of men from a distance, and the kindly cherishing of the princes of the states. By the ruler's cultivation of his own character, the duties of universal obligation are set forth. By honoring men of virtue and talents, he is preserved from errors of judgment. By showing affection to his relatives, there is no grumbling nor resentment amongst his uncles and brethren. By respecting the great ministers, he is kept from errors in the practice of government. By kind and considerate treatment of the whole body of officers, they are led to make the most grateful return for his courtesies. By dealing with the mass of the people as his children, they are led to exhort one another to do to what is benevolent. By encouraging the resort of all classes of artisans, his resources for expenditure are rendered ample. By indulgent treatment of men from a distance, they are brought to resort to him from all quarters. And by kindly cherishing the princes of the states, the whole kingdom is brought to revere him. Self-adjustment and purification, with careful regulation of his dress, and the not making a movement contrary to the rules of propriety. This is the way for a ruler to cultivate his person. Discarding slanderers and keeping himself from the seductions of beauty, making light of riches and giving honor to virtue. This is the way for him to encourage men of worth and talents. Giving them places of honor and large emolument, and sharing with them in their likes and dislikes. This is the way for him to encourage his relatives to love him. Giving them numerous officers to discharge their orders and commissions. This is the way for him to encourage the great ministers. According to them a generous confidence, and making their emoluments large. This is the way to encourage the body of officers. Employing them only at the proper times and making the imposts light. This is the way to encourage the people. By daily examinations and monthly trials, and by making their rations in accordance with their labors. This is the way to encourage the classes of artisans. To escort them on their departure and meet them on their coming, to commend the benevolent amongst them and show compassion to the incompetent. This is the way to treat indulgently men from a distance. To restore families whose line of succession has been broken, and to revive states that have been extinguished, to reduce to order states that are in confusion, and support those which are in peril, to have fixed times for their own reception at court and the reception of their envoys, to send them away after liberal treatment and welcome their coming with small contributions. This is the way to cherish the princes of the states. All who have the government of the kingdom with its states and families have the above 9 standard rules, and the means by which they are carried into practice is singleness. In all things, success depends on previous preparation, and without such previous preparation, there is sure to be failure. If what is to be spoken be previously determined, there will be no stumbling. If affairs be previously determined, there will be no difficulty with them. If one's actions have been previously determined, there will be no sorrow in connection with them. If principles of conduct have been previously determined, the practice of them will be inexhaustible. When those in inferior situations do not obtain the confidence of the sovereign, they cannot succeed in governing the people. There is a way to obtain the confidence of the sovereign. If one is not trusted by his friends, he will not get the confidence of his sovereign. There is a way to be trusted by one's friends. If one is not obedient to his parents, he will not be true to friends. There is a way to be obedient to one's parents. If one, on turning his thoughts in upon himself, he finds a want of sincerity, he will not be obedient to his parents. There is a way to the attainment of sincerity in oneself. If a man do not understand what is benevolent, he will not attain sincerity in himself. Sincerity is the way of heaven. The attainment of sincerity is the way of men. He who possesses sincerity is he who, without an effort, hits what is right and apprehends without the exercise of thought. He is the sage who naturally and easily embodies the right way. He who attains to sincerity is he who chooses what is benevolent and firmly holds it fast. To this attainment there are requisite the extensive study of what is benevolent, accurate inquiry about it, careful reflection on it, the clear discrimination of it, and the earnest practice of it. The superior man, whilst there is anything he has not studied, or whilst in what he has studied there is anything he cannot understand, will not intermit his labor. Whilst there is anything he has not inquired about, or anything in what he has inquired about which he does not know, he will not intermit his labor. Whilst there is anything which he has not reflected on, or anything in which he has reflected on which he does not apprehend, he will not intermit his labor. Whilst there is anything which he has not discriminated, or his discrimination is not clear, he will not intermit his labor. If there be anything which he has not practiced, or his practice fails in earnestness, he will not intermit his labor. If another man succeed by 1 effort, he will utilize 100 efforts. If another man succeed by 10 efforts, he will utilize 1,000. Let a man proceed in this way, and though dull, he will surely become intelligent. Though weak, he will surely become strong. When we have intelligence resulting from sincerity, this condition is to be ascribed to nature. When we have sincerity resulting from intelligence, this condition is ascribed to be instruction. But given the sincerity, and there shall be the intelligence. Given the intelligence, and there shall be the sincerity. It is only he who is possessed of the most complete sincerity that can exist under heaven, who can give its full development to his nature. Able to give its full development to his own nature, he can do the same to the nature of other men. Able to give its full development to the nature of other men, he can give their full development to the nature of animals and things. Able to give their full development to the natures of creatures and things, he can assist the transforming and nourishing powers of heaven and earth. Able to assist the transforming and nourishing powers of heaven and earth, he may, with heaven and earth, form a Timyan. Next to the above is he who cultivates to the utmost the shoots of benevolence in him. From those he can attain to the possession of sincerity. This sincerity becomes apparent. From being apparent, it becomes manifest. From being manifest, it becomes brilliant. Brilliant, it affects others. Affecting others, they are changed by it. Changed by it, they are transformed. It is only he who is possessed of the most complete sincerity that can exist under heaven who can transform. It is characteristic of the most entire sincerity to be able to foreknow. When a nation or family is about to flourish, there are sure to be happy omens, and when it is about to perish, there are sure to be unlucky omens. Such events are seen in the milfoil and tortoise, and affect the movements of the 4 limbs. When calamity or happiness is about to come, the benevolent shall certainly be foreknown by him, and the evil also. Therefore, the individual possessed of the most complete sincerity is like a spirit. Sincerity is that whereby self-completion is effected, and its way is that by which man must direct himself. Sincerity is the end and beginning of things. Without sincerity there would be nothing. On this account, the superior man regards the attainment of sincerity as the most excellent thing. The possessor of sincerity does not merely accomplish the self-completion for himself. With this quality he completes other men and things also. The completing himself shows his perfect virtue. The completing other men and things shows his knowledge. But these are virtues belonging to the nature, and this is the way by which a union is effected of the external and internal. Therefore, whenever he, the entirely sincere man, employs them, that is, these virtues, their action will be right. Hence, to entire sincerity there belongs ceaselessness. Not ceasing, it continues long. Continuing long, it evidences itself. Evidencing itself, it reaches further. Reaching further, it becomes large and substantial. Large and substantial, it becomes high and brilliant. Large and substantial, this is how it contains all things. High and brilliant, this is how it overspreads all things. Reaching distant and continuing long, this is how it perfects all things. So large and substantial, the individual possessing it is the co-equal of earth. So high and brilliant, it makes him the co-equal of heaven. So distant reaching and long continuing, it makes him infinite. Such being its nature, without any display, it becomes manifested. Without any movement, it produces changes. And without any effort, it accomplishes its ends. The way of heaven and earth may be completely declared in one sentence. They are without any doubleness. And so they produce things in a manner that is unfathomable. The way of heaven and earth is large and substantial, high and brilliant, distant reaching, and long enduring. The heaven now before us is only this bright shining spot, but when viewed in its inexhaustible extent, the soleil, moon, stars, and constellations of the zodiac are suspended in it, and all things are overspread by it. The earth before us is but a handful of soil, but when regarded in its breadth and thickness, it sustains mountains like the Hua and the Yo, without feeling their weight, and contains the rivers and seas without their leaking away. The mountain now before us appears only a stone, but when contemplated in all the vastness of its size, we see how the grass and trees are produced on it, and the birds and beasts dwell on it, and the precious things which men treasure up are found on it. The water now before us appears but a ladleful, yet extending our view to its unfathomable depths. The largest tortoises, iguanas, iguanodons, dragons, fishes, and turtles are produced in it. Articles of value and sources of wealth abound in it. It is said in the book of poetry, the ordinances of heaven, how performed are they in unceasing. The meaning is that it is thus that heaven is heaven, and again, how illustrious was it, the singleness of the virtue of King Wen, indicating that it was thus that King Wen was what he was. Singleness likewise is unceasing. How great is the path proper to the sage! Like overflowing water, it sends forth and nourishes all things, and rises up to the height of heaven. All complete is its greatness. It embraces the 300 rules of ceremony and the 3,000 rules of demeanor. It waits for the proper man, and then it is trodden. Hence it is said, only by perfect virtue can the perfect path and all its courses be made a fact. Therefore the superior man honors his virtuous nature and maintains constant inquiry and study, seeking to carry it out to its breadth and greatness, so as to omit none of the further exquisite and minute points which it embraces, and to raise it to its greatest height and brilliancy, so as to pursue the course of the mean. He cherishes his old knowledge and is continually acquiring new. He exerts an honest, generous earnestness in the esteem and practice of all propriety. Thus, when occupying a high situation, he is not proud, and in a low situation, he is not insubordinate. When the kingdom is well governed, he is sure by his words to rise, and when it is ill governed, he is sure by his silence to command forbearance to himself. Is not this what we find in the book of poetry? Intelligent is he, and prudent, and so preserves his person. The Digha Nikaya, the Das Sutta, Sutta 34, Chapter 1. Thus have I heard. The Exalted One was once staying at Kampa on the banks of Lake Gagara with a great company of the brethren, with about 500 in number. Then the Venerable Sariputta addressed them, saying, Friends, brethren. Yes, friend, responded the brethren, and the Venerable Sariputta spake thus. In groups from 1 to 10 I will declare the Dharma, so that so ye may nibbana win, that ye may make an end of ill and pain, that ye may be from every bond set free. There is one thing, friends, that helpeth much, one thing that helpeth much, one thing that is to be developed, one that is to be understood, one that is to be eliminated, one that belongs to disaster, one that leads to distinction, one that is hard to penetrate, one that is to be brought to pass, one that is to be thoroughly learnt, one that is to be realized. Which one thing helpeth much? Zeal in things that are benevolent. Which one thing is to be developed? Mindfulness with respect to the bodily factors accompanied by a pleasurable feeling. Which one thing is to be understood? Contact as a condition of intoxicants, asavas, and of grasping. Which one thing is to be eliminated? The conceit I am. Which one thing belongs to decline? Disorderly thinking. Which one thing leads to distinction? Orderly thinking. Which one thing is hard to penetrate? Immediacy of cessation in mental concentration. Which one thing is to be brought to pass? Sure and unshakable knowledge. Which one thing is to be thoroughly learnt? All beings are maintained by causes. Which one thing is to be actualized? Sure and unshakable emancipation of mind. Now these 10 things are genuine, true, thus not otherwise, not different, perfectly comprehended by the Tathagata. There are 2 things, friends, that help us much. 2 things that are to be developed, 2 things that are to be understood, 2 things that are to be eliminated, 2 things that belong to disaster, 2 things that lead to distinction, 2 things that are hard to penetrate, 2 things that are to be brought to pass, 2 things that are to be thoroughly learnt, 2 things that are to be actualized. Which 2 helpeth much? Mindfulness and deliberation. Which 2 are to be developed? Calm and insight. Which 2 are to be understood? Mind and body. Which 2 are to be eliminated? Ignorance and the craving for rebirth. Which 2 belong to decline? Contumacy and friendship with evil. Which 2 lead to distinction? Suavity and friendship with benevolent. Which 2 are hard to penetrate? That which is the condition, the cause of the corruption of beings, and that which is the condition, the cause of their purification. Which 2 are to be brought to pass? Insight into extinction and insight into the not coming to be. which two are to be thoroughly learnt, two elements, to wit, the conditioned and the unconditioned, which two are to be actualized, supernormal knowledge and emancipation. Now these twofold things are genuine, true, thus, not otherwise, not different, and perfectly comprehended by the Tathagata. There are three things, friends, that help with much, three things that are to be developed, three things that are to be understood, three things that are to be eliminated, three things that belong to disaster, three things that lead to distinction, three things that are hard to penetrate, three things that are to be brought to pass, three things that are to be thoroughly learned, three things that are to be actualized. Which three help much? Intercourse with noble-minded persons, hearing the benevolent Dharma, progress in doctrine, and minor doctrines. Which three are to be developed? The three modes of concentrative thought, to wit, mental application followed by sustained thought without mental application, concentrative thought without either. Which three are to be understood? Three modes of feeling, to wit, pleasurable, painful, and neutral feeling. Which three are to be eliminated? Three cravings, to wit, sensual, worldly craving, craving for rebirth, craving to end life. Which three belong to decline? Three roots of demerit, to wit, greed, hatred, illusion. Which three to distinction? Three roots of merit, to wit, disinterestedness, love, intelligence. Which three are hard to penetrate? Three elements of deliverance, to wit, renunciation, this is the escape from all worldly desires, the immaterial, this is the escape from the material things, but whatever has become is conditioned, has arisen from a cause. The escape from that is cessation. Which three are to be brought to pass? Three knowledges, to wit, as to the past, the future, and the present. Which three are to be thoroughly learnt? Three elements, to wit, the element of sensuous desires, of rupa, of arupa. Which three are to be actualized? Three branches of wisdom, to wit, intuition of former births, intuition of the deceases and rebirths of beings, intuition of the extinction of intoxicants. Now these three things are genuine, true, thus not otherwise, not different, perfectly comprehended by the Tathagata. There are four things, friends, that help with much, four things that are to be understood, four things that are to be developed, four things that are to be understood, four things that are to be eliminated, four things that belong to disaster, four things that lead to distinction, four things that are hard to penetrate, four things that are to be brought to pass, four things that are to be thoroughly learned, four things that are not to be actualized. Which four help with much? Four wheels, to wit, the orbit of a favorable place of residence, the orbit of association with the benevolent, perfect adjustment of oneself, the cycle of merit wrought in the past. Which four are to be developed? The four applications of mindfulness, to wit, herein, friends, a brother as to the body, feelings, thought, and ideas continues so to look upon each of these four groups that it remains ardent, self-possessed, and mindful, and can suppress both the hankering and the dejection common in the world. Which four are to be understood? The four nutriments, to wit, solid nutrient, gross or subtle, contact as second, the purposes of the mind as third, rebirth, consciousness as fourth. Which four are to be eliminated? The four floods of sensuous desires, rebecoming, erroneous opinions, ignorance. Which four belong to decline? The four bonds of sensuous desires, rebecoming, erroneous opinions, ignorance. Which four lead to distinction? The four detachments, to wit, detachment from sensuous desires, rebecoming, erroneous opinions, ignorance. Which four are hard to penetrate? The four concentrations, to wit, the leading to decline, that leading to maintenance, that leading to distinction, that leading to nibbana. Which four are to be brought to pass? The four knowledges, to wit, knowledge of the doctrine, the Dharma, knowledge of its corollaries, knowledge of what is in another's consciousness, and popular knowledge. Which four are to be thoroughly learnt? The fourfold Aryan truth, to wit, Aryan truth as to ill, and the Aryan truth as to the genesis of ill, the cessation of ill, the path leading to the cessation of ill. Which four are to be actualized? The four fruits of the recluse's life, to wit, the fruit of each path, that of the stream winning, of once returning, of never returning, of arahatship. Now these four things are genuine, thus not otherwise, not different, perfectly comprehended by the Tathagata. There are five things, friends, that help with much, five things that are to be developed, five things that are to be understood, five things that are to be eliminated, five things that belong to disaster, five things that lead to distinction, five things that are hard to penetrate, five things that are to be brought to pass, five things that are to be thoroughly learnt, five things that are to be actualized. Which five help with much? Five factors in spiritual wrestling: confidence or faith, benevolent, health, honesty, energy, insight. Which five are to be developed? The five factors of perfect concentration, to wit, suffusion of rapture, suffusion of easeful bliss, suffusion of telepathic consciousness, suffusion of light and images for retrospective thought. Which five are to be understood? The five aggregates of grasping, to wit, material qualities, feeling, perception, volitional, and other complexes, consciousness. Which five are to be eliminated? The five hindrances, to wit, sensuality, malevolence, sloth, and torpor, excitement, and worry. Which five belong to decline? The five spiritual barrennesses, to wit, Uno. Herein a brother doubts, is perplexed about the master, comes to no definite choice, is not satisfied. He being thus, his mind does not incline, bend towards ardor, devotion, perseverance, exertion. This is the first barrenness. Dos a cuatro. When he doubts, is perplexed about the Dharma, the Sangha, the training. These are in order, the second, third, and fourth barrennesses. Cinco. When he is offended with his fellow disciples, vexed, agitated, style toward them, he being thus, his mind does not incline towards ardor further. Which five belong to distinction? The five spiritual faculties, to wit, faith, energy, mindfulness, concentration, insight. Which five are hard to penetrate? The five elements favorable to deliverance, to wit, herein, friends, a brother is contemplating sensuous desires, his heart does not leap forward to them, nor rest complacent in them, does not choose them, but when he is contemplating renunciation of them, his heart leaps forward, rests complacent in it, chooses it. This frame of mind he gets well in hand, well developed, well lifted, well freed, and detached from sense desires, and those intoxicants whose miseries, those fevers which arise in consequence of sense desires, from all these he is freed, nor does he feel that sort of feeling. This is pronounced to be the first deliverance. Dos. Again, friends, when a brother is contemplating thoughts of ill will, his heart does not leap forward towards them, nor rush complacent in them, he does not choose them. But when he is contemplating renunciation of them, his heart leaps forward, rests complacent in it, chooses it. This frame of mind he gets well in hand, well developed, well lifted up, well freed, and detached from ill will. And those intoxicants whose miseries, these fevers which arise in consequence of ill will, from all these he is freed, nor does he feel that sort of feeling. This is pronounced to be the second deliverance. Tres. Again, friends, when a brother is contemplating thoughts of cruelty, his heart does not leap forward to them, nor rest complacent in them, does not choose them. But when he is contemplating renunciation of them, his heart leaps forward, rests complacent in it, chooses it. This frame of mind he gets well in hand, well developed, well lifted up, well freed, and detached from cruelty. And those intoxicants whose miseries, those fevers which arise in consequence of cruelty, from all these he is freed, nor does he feel that sort of feeling. This is pronounced to be the third deliverance. Again, friends, when a brother is contemplating external objects, his heart does not leap forward to them, nor rest complacent in them, does not choose them. But when he is contemplating renunciation of them, his heart leaps forward, rests complacent in it, chooses it. This frame of mind he gets well in hand, well developed, well lifted up, well freed, and detached from external objects. And those intoxicants whose miseries, those fevers which arise in consequence of external objects, from all these he is freed, nor does he feel that sort of feeling. This is pronounced to be the fourth deliverance. Cinco. Again, friends, when a brother is contemplating thoughts of individuality, his heart does not leap forward to them, nor rest complacent in them, does not choose them. But when he is contemplating renunciation of them, his heart leaps forward, rests complacent in it, chooses it. This frame of mind he gets well in hand, well developed, well lifted up, well freed, and detached from thoughts of individuality. And those intoxicants whose miseries, those fevers which arise in consequence of thoughts of individuality, from all these he is freed, nor does he feel that sort of feeling. This is pronounced to be the fifth deliverance. Which five are to be brought to pass? The fivefold intuition of perfect concentration, to wit, as a personal experience, the intuition arises that uno, this rapture is both a present happiness and a future result of happiness. Dos, this rapture is Aryan, is unworldly. Tres, this rapture is not a pursuit of any but the noblest men. Cuatro, this rapture is benevolent, excellent, has won tranquilization, has attained to mental upliftment and concentration, and is not instigated, nor opposed, nor foiled. Cinco, this rapture I myself with mental clarity attain, and from it with mental clarity emerge. Which five would be thoroughly learnt, to the five occasions of emancipation, to wit, herein when the master or a reverend fellow disciple teaches the Dharma to a brother, according as the teaching is given, the listener comes to know both the matter of the doctrine and the letter and the text of the doctrine. And gladness springs up in him, and in him gladness springs up, his mind enraptured, the faculties become serene, with serenity comes happiness, and of him thus happy the heart is stayed and firm. This is the first occasion. In the next place, a brother has a similar experience, not from hearing the master or a reverend fellow disciple teach, but whilst himself teaching others the Dharma in detail, as he has learnt and got it by memory, and he comes to know both the matter of the doctrine and the text of the doctrine. And gladness springs up in him, and in him gladness springs up, his mind enraptured, the faculties become serene, with serenity comes happiness, and of him thus happy, the heart is stayed and firm. This is the second occasion. In the third place, a brother has a similar experience, not on those first two occasions, but when he is reciting the doctrines of the Dharma in detail, as he has learnt and got them by memory, and he comes to know both the matter of the doctrine and the text of the doctrine. And gladness springs up in him, and in him gladness thus springs up. His mind enraptured, the faculties become serene, with serenity comes happiness, and of him thus happy, the heart is stayed and firm. This is the third occasion. Cuatro. In the fourth place, a brother has a similar experience, not on those first three occasions, but when he applies his thought to the Dhamma as he has learnt and got it by memory, and he comes to know both the matter of the doctrine and the text of the doctrine, and sustains protracted meditation on it and contemplates it in mind. And gladness springs up in him, and in him gladness thus springs up. His mind enraptured, the faculties become serene, with serenity comes happiness, and of him thus happy, this heart is stayed and firm. This is the fourth occasion. Finally, a brother has a similar experience, not on those first four occasions, but when he has well grasped some given clue to concentration, has well applied his understanding, has well thought it out, has well penetrated it by intuition. And gladness springs up in him, and in him gladness thus springs up. In his mind enraptured, the faculties become serene. With serenity comes happiness, and to him thus happy, the heart is stayed and firm. This is the fifth occasion. Which five are to be actualized? The five bodies of doctrine to it: virtues, concentrative exercise, insight, emancipation, knowledge, and insight requisite for emancipation. Now these five things are genuine, true, thus not otherwise, not different, perfectly comprehended by the Tathagata. There are 6 things, friends, that helpeth much, 6 things that are to be developed, 6 things that are to be understood, 6 things that are to be eliminated, 6 things that belong to disaster, 6 things that lead to distinction, 6 things that are hard to penetrate, 6 things that are to be brought to pass, 6 things that are to be thoroughly learnt, 6 things that are to be actualized, which 6 help much. The 6 occasions of fraternal living, to wit: 1. Herein, friends, when a brother's kindly act towards his fellow disciples has been attested as wrought publicly and in private, that is an occasion of fraternity, causing affection and regard, and conducing to concord, absence of strife, harmony, union. 2 or 3. The second and third occasions are those of kindly speech and kind thoughts. 4. In the second place, when a brother who has honestly and righteously obtained gifts distributes these impartially amongst his fellow disciples, and has everything in common with them, even to the contents of his alms bowl, that is an occasion of fraternity. And further. 5. Next, when the character and virtuous habits of a brother are without rapture or flaw, are consistently practiced unblemished, making a man free, commended by the wise, unperverted, and conducing to rapt concentration, and he so virtuous dwells openly and privately amongst his fellow disciples, that is an occasion of fraternity, causing affection and regard, and conducing to concord, absence of strife, harmony, union. 6. Lastly, when a brother lives with his religious life guided by that Aryan safeguarding belief which leads him who so lives to the perfect destruction of sorrow, when he thus equipped lives amongst his fellow disciples publicly and in private, that is an occasion of fraternity like the foregoing. Which 6 are to be developed? The 6 matters for recollection, to wit: the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha, the virtuous precepts, renunciation, the Devas. Which 6 are to be understood? The 6 organs of sense, or fields of personal experience, to wit: sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, and mind. Which 6 are to be eliminated? The 6 groups of cravings, to wit: the 5 kinds of sense objects and phenomena. Which 6 belong to decline? The 6 forms of irreverence, to wit: herein, friends, a brother conducts himself irreverently and insolently to the master, the Dharma, the Sangha, the training, or to his studies, or lacks in reverence and respect towards the duties of courtesy. Which 6 belong to distinction? The 6 forms of reverence, to wit: herein, friends, a brother conducts himself in the opposite manner in the foregoing 6 cases. Which 6 are to have to penetrate? The 6 elements tending to deliverance, to wit: herein, friends, a brother might say: lo, I have developed mental emancipation by love, I have multiplied it, made it a vehicle and a base, I have brought it out, accumulated, and set it well going, nevertheless malevolence persistently possesses my heart. To him it should be said: say not so, your reverence, do not misrepresent the Exalted One. It is not well to calumniate the Exalted One. Surely he would not say this was so. This is a baseless and uncalled for statement, friend. Things cannot be as you say. Emancipation of the heart through love, brother, this is how you become delivered from malevolence. 2 or 4. In the same way, a brother might wrongly complain that after cultivating emancipation of the heart through pity, he was still possessed by cruelty, or that after cultivating emancipation of the heart through sympathetic joy or through equanimity, he was still possessed by disgust and passion, respectively. Next, friends, a brother might say, Lo, I have developed mental emancipation from the power of any object to catch the fancy and incite lust. I have multiplied that emancipation, made it a vehicle and a base. I have brought it out, accumulated, and set it well going. Nevertheless, my mind still pursues seductive objects. Or again, he may say, Lo, the notion I am is offensive to me. I pay no heed to the notion this I exists. Nevertheless, doubts and queries and debating still possess my mind. To these answers should be made as before. He should be assured that such cannot actually be the case, that it is by emancipating the heart through equanimity, or again through the expulsion of the conceit of the existence of an I, that he becomes delivered from lust and from doubts and queries and debatings. Which six are to be brought to pass, the six chronic states, to wit, uno a cinco. Herein, friends and brother, on occasion of any of the five kinds of sensation, seis, as well as on that occasion any impression or idea is neither delighted nor displeased, but remains equable, mindful, and deliberate. Which six are to be thoroughly learned, the six unsurpassable experiences, to wit, certain sights, certain things heard, certain gains, certain training, certain ministry, certain memories. Which six are to be actualized, the six super knowledges. Herein, friends, a brother, uno, enjoys the wondrous gift in its various modes. Being one, he becomes many, or having become many, he becomes one again. He becomes invisible or invisible. He goes feeling no obstruction to the further side of a wall, a rampart, or hill. As if through air, he penetrates up and down through the solid ground. As if through water, he walks on water without breaking through, as if on solid ground. He travels cross-legged in the sky, like the birds on wing. Even the moon and the soleil, so potent, so mighty though they be, does he touch and feel with his hand. He reaches in the body even out to the heaven of Brahma. Dos, with a clear heavenly ear surpassing the ear of men, he hears sounds both human and celestial, whether distant or near. Tres, penetrating with his own heart the hearts of other beings, of other men, he knows them. He discerns the passionate mind to be passionate, and the calm mind calm, the angry mind to be angry, and the peaceful mind peaceful, the dull mind to be dull, and the alert mind to be alert, the attentive mind to be attentive, and the wandering mind wandering, the broad mind to be broad, and the narrow mind narrow, the mean mind to be mean, and the lofty mind lofty, the steadfast mind to be steadfast, and the wavering mind to be wavering, the free mind to be freed, and the enslaved mind enslaved. He recalls to mind his various temporary states in days gone by, 1 birth, or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 births, 10 or 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 or 100 or 1,000 or 100,000 births, through many an eon of dissolution, many an eon of evolution, many an eon of both dissolution and evolution. In such a place, such was my name, such my family, such my caste, such my food, such my experience of discomfort or of ease, and such the limits of my life. When I passed away from that state, I took form again in such a place. There I had such and such a name, and family, and caste, and food, and experience of discomfort or of ease. Such was the limit of my life. When I passed away from that state, I took form again here. Thus does he call to mind his temporary states and days gone by, in all their details and in all their modes. Cinco. With the pure heavenly eye surpassing that of men, he sees beings as they pass away from one form of existence and take shape in another. He recognizes the mean and the noble, the well-favored and the ill-favored, the happy and the wretched, passing away according to their deeds. Such and such beings, my brethren, evildoers in act and word and thought, revilers of the noble ones, holding to wrong views, acquiring for themselves that karma which results from wrong views, they on the dissolution of the body after death are reborn in some unhappy state of suffering or woe. But such and such beings, my brethren, well-doers in act and word and thought, not revilers of the noble ones, holding to right views, acquiring for themselves that karma that results from right views, they on the dissolution of the body after death are reborn in some happy state in heaven. Thus, with the pure heavenly eye surpassing that of men, he sees beings as they pass away from one state of existence and take form in another. He recognizes the mean and the noble, the well-favored and the ill-favored, the happy and the wretched, passing away according to their deeds. 6. He lives in the attainment, the personal knowledge and actualization through the extinction of the intoxicants of sane and immune freedom of heart and mind. Now these 6 things are genuine, true, thus not otherwise, not different, perfectly comprehended by the Tathagata. 7s. There are 7 things, friends, that help us much, 7 things that are to be developed, 7 things that are to be understood, 7 things that are to be eliminated, 7 things that belong to the disaster, 7 things that lead to distinction, 7 things that are hard to penetrate, 7 things that are to be brought to pass, 7 things that are to be thoroughly learned, 7 things that are to be actualized. Which 7 helpeth much? The 7 treasures, to wit, the treasure of faith, of virtues, of conscientiousness, of discretion, of learning, of self-denial, of insight. Which 7 are to be developed? 7 factors of enlightenment, to wit, the factor of mindfulness, of study, of doctrines, of energy, of zest, of serenity, of concentration, of equanimity. Which 7 are to be understood? 7 stations of consciousness. Uno, there are beings, brethren, who are diverse both in body and in mind, such as mankind, certain devas, and some who have gone to an evil doom. This is the first station or persistence for reborn consciousness. Other beings are diverse of body, but uniform in mind, such as the devas of the Brahma world, reborn there from practice here of the first jhana. Tres, others are uniform in body, diverse in intelligence, such as the radiant devas. Cuatro, others are uniform both in body and in intelligence, such as the illustrious devas. Cinco, others there are who, by having passed wholly beyond all consciousness of matter, by the dying out of the consciousness of sense reaction, by having turned the attention away from any consciousness of the manifold, and become conscious only of space as infinite, are dwellers in the realm of infinite space. Seis, others there are who, by having passed wholly beyond the realm of infinite space and become conscious only of consciousness as infinite, are dwellers in the realm of infinite consciousness. Siete, others there are who, having passed wholly beyond the realm of infinite consciousness and become conscious only that there is nothing whatever, are dwellers in the realm of nothingness. Such are the remaining stations of consciousness. Which 7 are to be eliminated? The 7 forms of latent bias, to wit, the bias of sensual passion, of enmity, of false opinion, of doubt, of conceit, of lust, for rebirth, of ignorance. Which 7 belong to decline? The 7 vicious qualities, to wit, want of faith, unconscientiousness, indiscretion, want of doctrinal knowledge, slackness, muddle-headedness, want of insight. Which 7 are belonging to increase? Which 7 belong to increase? The 7 virtuous qualities, to wit, the opposite of the foregoing. Which 7 are hard to penetrate? The 7 qualities of the benevolent, to wit, knowledge of the Dhamma, of the meaning contained in its doctrines, knowledge of the self, knowledge how to be temperate, how to choose and keep time, knowledge of groups of persons and of individuals. Which 7 are to be brought to pass? The 7 perceptions, to wit, that of impermanence, of soullessness, of ugliness, of evil in the world, of elimination, of passionlessness, of cessation. Which 7 are to be thoroughly understood? The 7 bases of arahantship. Herein, friends, the brother is keenly desirous of entering the training and longs to continue doing so. He feels similarly with regard to insight into the doctrine, to the suppression of hankerings, to the need of solitude, to evoking energy, to mindfulness, and perspicacity, to intuition of the truth. Which 7 are to be actualized? The 7 powers of the arahant. Herein, friends, for a brother who is arahant, uno, the impermanence of all conditioned things is well seen as it truly is by perfect insight. This is one of his powers, on account of which he recognizes that for him the intoxicants are destroyed. Dos, that sensuous worldly desires are like coals of fire is well seen as it truly is, and as above destroyed. Tres, his heart is inclined to set upon detachment, and he has made detachment its mountain cave, its object. His heart loves renunciation and has become entirely non-existent for all opportunities of becoming intoxicants. This is 1. Cuatro, the 4 applications of mindfulness have been developed and well developed. Cinco, so also for the 5 spiritual faculties. Seis, the 7 factors of enlightenment. Siete, the Aryan Eightfold Path. In that this and those have been developed and well developed, these are powers of the arahant brother, on account of which he recognizes that for him the intoxicants are destroyed. Now these 7 things are genuine, true, thus not otherwise, not different, perfectly comprehended by the Tathagata. The Dhammapada 25, the Bhikshu Vaga. Benevolent is restraint over the eye, benevolent is restraint over the ear, benevolent is restraint over the nose, benevolent is restraint over the tongue. Benevolent is restraint in the body, benevolent is restraint in speech, benevolent is restraint in thought. Restraint everywhere is benevolent. The monk restrained in every way is freed from all suffering. He who has control over his hands, feet, and tongue, who is fully controlled, delights in inward development, is absorbed in meditation, keeps to himself, and is contented. Him do people call a monk. That monk who has control over his tongue is moderate in speech, unassuming, and who explains the Dhamma in both letter and spirit. Whatever he says is pleasing. That monk who abides in the Dhamma, delights in the Dhamma, meditates on the Dhamma, and bears the Dhamma well in mind. He does not fall away from the sublime Dhamma. One should not despise what one has received, nor envy the gains of others. The monk who envies the gains of others does not attain to meditative absorption. A bhikshu who does not despise what he has received, even though it be little, who is pure in livelihood and unremitting in effort, him even the angels honor. He who has no attachment whatsoever for the mind and body, who does not grieve for what he has not, he is truly called a bhikshu. The bhikshu who abides in universal love and is deeply devoted to the Dharma of the Buddha attains the peace of Nibbana, the bliss of the cessation of all conditioned things. Empty this boat, O bhikshu, emptied it will sail lightly. Rid of lust and hatred, you shall reach Nibbana. Cut off the five, abandon the five, and cultivate the five. The bhikshu who has overcome the five bonds is called one who has crossed the flood. Meditate, O bhikshu, do not be heedless, let not your mind whirl on sensual pleasures. Heedless, do not swallow a red-hot iron ball, lest you cry when burning, oh, this is painful. There is no meditative concentration for him who lacks insight, and no insight for him who lacks meditative concentration. He in whom are found both meditative concentration and insight, indeed, is close to Nibbana. The bhikshu who has retired to a solitary abode and calmed his mind, who comprehends the Dhamma with insight, in him there arises a delight that transcends all human delights. Whenever he sees with insight the rise and fall of the aggregates, he is full of joy and happiness. To the discerning one, this reflects the deathless. Control of the senses, contentment, restraint according to the code of monastic discipline. These form the basis of holy life here for the wise monk. Let him associate with friends who are noble, energetic, and pure in life. Let him be cordial and refined in conduct. Thus, full of joy, he will make an end of suffering. Just as the jasmine creeper sheds its withered flowers, even so, bhikshus, should you totally shed lust and hatred. The bhikshu who is calm in body, calm in speech, calm in thought, well composed, and who has spewed out worldliness, he truly is called serene. By oneself one must censure oneself and scrutinize oneself. The self-guarded and mindful bhikshu will always live in happiness. One is one's own protector, one is one's own refuge, therefore one should control oneself even as a trader controls a noble steed. Full of joy, full of faith in the Dharma of the Buddha, the bhikshu attains the peaceful state. The bliss of cessation of conditioned things. That bhikshu who, whilst young, devotes himself to the Dhamma of the Buddha, illumines this world like the moon freed from clouds. Acts, Gospels, Acts, chapters 22 a 24. Brothers and fathers, listen now to my defense. When they heard him speak to them in Aramaic, they became very quiet. Then Paul said, I am a Jewish brother born in Tarsus of Cilicia, but brought up in this city. I studied under Gamaliel and was thoroughly trained in the law of our ancestors. I was just as zealous for God as any of you are today. I persecuted the followers of this way to their death, arresting both men and women and throwing them into prison, as the high priest and all the council can themselves testify. I even obtained letters from them to their associates in Damascus, and went there to bring these people as prisoners to Jerusalem to be punished. About noon, as I came near Damascus, suddenly a bright light from heaven flashed around me. I fell to the ground and heard a voice say to me, Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me? Who are you, Master? I asked. I am Jesus of Nazareth, whom you are persecuting, he replied. My companions saw the light, but they did not understand the voice of him who was speaking to me. What shall I do, Master? I asked. Get up, the Master said, and go into Damascus. There you will be told all that you have been assigned to do. My companions led me by the hand into Damascus, because the brilliance of the light had blinded me. A man named Ananias came to see me. He was a devout observer of the law and highly respected by all the Jewish brethren living there. He stood beside me and said, Brother Saul, receive your sight. And at that very moment I was able to see him. Then he said, The God of our ancestors has chosen you to know God's will and to see the righteous one and to hear words from his mouth. You will be his witness to all people of what you have seen and heard. And now what are you waiting for? Get up, be baptized, and wash your sins away, calling on his name. When I returned to Jerusalem and was praying at the temple, I fell into a trance and saw the Master speaking to me. Quick, he said, leave Jerusalem immediately, because the people here will not accept your testimony about me. Master, I replied, these people know that I went from one synagogue to another to imprison and beat those who believe in you. And when the blood of your martyr Stephen was shed, I stood there giving my approval and guarding the clothes of those who were killing him. Then the Master said to me, Go, I will send you distantly away to the Gentiles. The crowd listened to Paul until he said this. Then they raised their voices and shouted, Rid the earth of him, he is not fit to live. As they were shouting and throwing off their cloaks and flinging dust into the air, The commander ordered that Paul be taken into the barracks. He directed that he be flogged and interrogated in order to find out why the people were shouting at him like this. As they stretched him out to flog him, Paul said to the centurion standing there, "Is it legal for you to flog a Roman citizen who hasn't even been found guilty?" When the centurion heard this, he went to the commander and reported it. "What are you going to do?" he asked. "This man is a Roman citizen." The commander went to Paul and asked, "Tell me, are you a Roman citizen?" "Yes, I am," he answered. Then the commander said, "I had to pay a lot of money for my citizenship, but I was born a citizen," Paul replied. Those who were about to interrogate him withdrew immediately. The commander himself was alarmed when he understood that he had put Paul, a Roman citizen, in chains. The commander wanted to find out exactly why Paul was being accused by the Jewish brethren, so the next day he released him and ordered the chief priests and all the members of the Sanhedrin to assemble. Then he brought Paul and had him stand before them. Paul looked straight at the Sanhedrin and said, "My brothers, I have fulfilled my duty to God in all benevolent conscience to this day." At this, the high priest Ananias ordered those standing near Paul to strike him on the mouth. Then Paul said to him, "God will strike you, you whitewashed wall. You sit there to judge me according to the law, yet you yourself violate the law by commanding that I be struck." Those who were standing near Paul said, "How dare you insult God's high priest?" Paul replied, "Brothers, I did not understand that he was the high priest, for it is written, 'Do not speak evil about the ruler of your people.'" Then Paul, knowing that some of them were Sadducees and the others Pharisees, called out in the Sanhedrin, "My brothers, I am a Pharisee, descended from Pharisees. I stand on trial because of the hope of the resurrection of the dead." When he said this, a dispute broke out between the Pharisees and the Sadducees, and the assembly was divided. The Sadducees say that there is no resurrection, and that there are neither angels nor spirits, but the Pharisees believe all these things. There was a great uproar, and some of the teachers of the law, who were Pharisees, stood up and argued vigorously. "We find nothing wrong with this man," they said. "What if a spirit or an angel has spoken to him?" The dispute became so violent that the commander was afraid Paul would be torn to portions by them. He ordered the troops to go down and take him away from them by force and bring him into the barracks. The following night the master stood near Paul and said, "Take courage, as you have testified about me in Jerusalem, so you must also testify in Rome." The next matin some Jewish brethren formed a conspiracy and bound themselves with an oath not to eat or drink until they had killed Paul. Further than 40 men were involved in this plot. They went to the chief priests and the elders and said, "We have taken a solemn oath not to eat anything until we have killed Paul. Now then, you and the Sanhedrin petition the commander to bring him before you on the pretext of wanting further accurate information about his case. We are ready to kill him before he gets there." But when the son of Paul's sister heard of this plot, he went into the barracks and told Paul. Then Paul called one of the centurions and said, "Take this young man to the commander. He has something to tell him." So he took him to the commander. The centurion said, "Paul, the prisoner, sent for me and asked me to bring this young man to you because he has something to tell you." The commander took the young man by the hand, drew him aside, and asked, "What is it you want to tell me?" He said, "Some Jewish brethren have agreed to ask you to bring Paul before the Sanhedrin tomorrow, mañana, on the pretext of wanting further accurate information about him. Don't give in to them, because further than 40 of them are waiting in ambush for him. They have taken an oath not to eat or drink until they have killed him. They are ready now, waiting for your consent to their request." The commander dismissed the young man with this warning, "Don't tell anyone that you have reported this to me." Then he called 2 of his centurions and ordered them to get ready a detachment of 200 soldiers, 70 horsemen, and 200 spearmen to go to Caesarea at 9 tonight. Provide horses for Paul so that he may be taken safely to Governor Felix. He wrote a letter as follows: "Claudius Silasius, to His Excellency Governor Felix, greetings. This man was seized by the Jewish brethren, and they were about to kill him, but I came with my troops and rescued him, for I had learned that he is a Roman citizen. I wanted to know why they were accusing him, so I brought him to their Sanhedrin. I found that the accusation had nothing to do with questions about their law, but there was no charge against him that deserved death or imprisonment. When I was informed of a plot to be carried out against the man, I sent him to you at once. I also ordered his accusers to present to you their case against him." So the soldiers, carrying out their orders, took Paul with them during the night and brought him as distant as Antipatris. The next day they let the cavalry go on with him, whilst they returned to the barracks. When the cavalry arrived in Caesarea, they delivered the letter to the governor and handed Paul over to him. The governor read the letter and asked what province he was from. Learning that he was from Cilicia, he said, "I will hear your case when your accusers get here." Then he ordered that Paul be kept under guard in Herod's palace. 5 days later, the high priest Ananias went down to Caesarea with some of the elders and a lawyer named Tertullus, and they brought their charges against Paul against Paul before the governor. When Paul was called in, Tertullus presented his case before Felix. We have enjoyed a long period of peace under you, and your foresight has brought about reforms in this nation. Everywhere and in everywhere, most excellent Felix, we acknowledge this with profound gratitude. But in order not to weary you further, I would request that you be kind enough to hear us briefly. We have found this man to be a troublemaker, stirring up riots amongst the Jewish brethren all over the world. He is a ringleader of the Nazarene sect, and even tried to desecrate the temple, so we seized him. By examining him yourself, you will be able to learn the truth about all these charges we are bringing against him. The other Jewish brethren joined in this accusation, asserting that these things were true. When the governor motioned for him to speak, Paul replied, I know that for a number of years you have been a judge over this nation, so I gladly make my defense. You can easily verify that no further than 12 days ago I went up to Jerusalem to worship. My accusers did not find me arguing with anyone at the temple, or stirring up a crowd in the synagogues or anywhere else in the city, and they cannot prove to you the charges they are now making against me. However, I admit that I worship the God of our ancestors as a follower of the way, which they call a sect. I believe everything that is in accordance with the law and that is written in the prophets, and I have the same hope in God as these men themselves have, that there will be a resurrection of both the righteous and the wicked. So I strive always to keep my conscience clear before God and man. After an absence of several years, I came to Jerusalem to bring my people gifts for the poor and to present offerings. I was ceremonially clean when they found me in the temple courts doing this. There was no crowd with me, nor was I involved in any disturbance. But there are some Jewish brethren from the province of Asia who ought to be here before you and bring charges if they have anything against me. Or these who are here should state what crime they found in me when I stood before the Sanhedrin. Unless it was this one thing, I shouted as soon as I stood in their presence. It is concerning the resurrection of the dead that I am on trial before you today. Then Felix, who was well acquainted with the way, adjourned the proceedings. When Lysias, the commander, comes, he said, I will decide your case. He ordered the centurion to keep Paul under guard, but to give him some freedom and permit his friends to take care of his needs. Several days later, Felix came with his wife, Drusilla, who was Jewish sister. He sent for Paul and listened to him as he spoke about faith in Christ Jesus. As Paul talked about righteousness, self-control, and the judgment to come, Felix was afraid and said, That's enough for now. You may leave. When I find it convenient, I will send for you. At the same time, he was hoping that Paul would offer him a bribe, so he sent for him frequently and talked with him. When 2 years had passed, Felix was succeeded by Porcius Festus, but because Felix wanted to grant a favor to the Jewish brethren, he left Paul in prison. Quran. Surah Al-Qadr, Surah Al-Bayyina, Surah Al-Zalzala, Surah Al-Adiyat, Surah Al-Qadiyah, Surah Al-Takatur. 97 a 102. Surah Al-Qadr. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of Allah, most gracious, most merciful. Verily, we have sent this Quran down in the night of Al-Qadr decree. And what will make you know what the night of Al-Qadr decree is? The night of Al-Qadr decree is better than 1,000 months. 1,000 months. Therein descend the angels of the Ruh, Jibreel, by Allah's permission with all decrees. Peace. All that night there is peace and benevolence from Allah to Allah's believing servants until the appearance of dawn. Surah Al-Bayyina. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of Allah, most gracious, most merciful. Those who disbelieved amongst the people of the scripture and the polytheists were not to be parted from misbelief until there came to them clear evidence, a messenger from Allah, reciting purified scriptures, within which are correct writings. Nor did those who were given the scripture become divided until after there had come to them clear evidence. And they were not commanded except to worship Allah, being sincere to Allah in religion, inclining to truth, and to establish prayer, and to give zakat, and that is the correct religion. Indeed, they who disbelieved amongst the people of the scripture and the polytheists will be in the fire of hell, abiding eternally therein. Those are the worst of creatures. Indeed, they who have believed and done righteous deeds, those are the best of creatures. Their reward with Allah will be gardens of perpetual residence, beneath which rivers flow, wherein they will abide forever. Allah being pleased with them and they with Allah. That is for whoever has feared his Lord. Surah Az-Zalzalah. Bismillah ar-Rahmani ar-Rahim. In the name of Allah, most gracious, most merciful. When the earth is shaken to her utmost convulsion, and the earth throws up her burdens from within, and man cries distressed, what is the matter with her? On that day she will declare her tidings, for that thy Lord will have given her inspiration. On that day will men proceed in companies sorted out, to be shown the deeds that they had done. Then shall anyone who has done an atom's weight of benevolence see it, and anyone who has done an atom's weight of evil shall see it. Surah Al-Adiyat. Bismillah ar-Rahmani ar-Rahim. In the name of Allah, most gracious, most merciful. By the steeds that run with panting breath, and strike sparks of fire, and push home the charge in the matan, and raise the dust in clouds the while, and penetrate forthwith into the midst of the foe and mass. Truly man is to his Lord ungrateful, and to that fact he bears witness by his deeds. And violent is he in his love of wealth. Does he not know when that which is in the graves is scattered abroad, and that which is locked up in human breasts is made manifest, that their Lord had been well acquainted with them even to that day? So Al-Qariyah. Bismillah ar-Rahmani ar-Rahim. In the name of Allah, most gracious, most merciful. The day of noise and clamor. What is the day of noise and clamor, and what will explain to thee what the day of noise and clamor is? It is a day whereon men will be like the moth scattered about, and the mountains will be like carded wool. Then he whose balance of benevolent deeds will be found heavy will be in a life of benevolent pleasure and satisfaction, but he whose balance of benevolent deeds will be found light will have his home in a bottomless pit. And what will explain to thee what this is? It is a fire blazing fiercely. Surah Al-Takatur. Bismillah ar-Rahmani ar-Rahim. In the name of Allah, most gracious, most merciful. The mutual rivalry for piling up the benevolent things of this life, of this world, diverts you from the further serious things, until ye visit the graves. But nay, ye soon shall know the reality. Again, ye soon shall know. Nay, were ye to know with certainty of mind, ye would beware. Ye shall certainly see hellfire. Again, ye shall see it with certainty of sight. Then shall ye be questioned that day about the joy ye indulged in. Tanakh, Yehoshua, chapters 19 a 21. And the second lot came out to Shimon, to the tribe of the children of Shimon according to their families, and their inheritance was in the midst of the inheritance of the children of Yehuda. And they had in their inheritance Beersheba and Sheba and Moladah, and Hazar Shual and Bala and Ezem, and Otolad, and Betul and Hormah, and Ziklag, and Bet Hamar Kabot, and Hazar Susa, and Bet Lebaoth, and Sharahen, 13 cities and their villages. Ain, Rimon, and Eter, and Ashan, 4 cities and their villages, and all the villages that were round about these cities, to Balat, Ber, Ramah of the south. This is the inheritance of the children of Shimon according to their families. Out of the lot of the children of Yehuda was the inheritance of the children of Shimon, for the portion of the children of Yehuda was too much for them. Therefore the children of Shimon inherited in the midst of their inheritance. And the third lot came up for the children of Zebulun, according to their families, and the border of their inheritance was to Sarid. And their border went up to the sea, and Maralah, and reached to Debeshet, and reached the river that is before Yoknaam, and turned from Sarid eastward towards the Soleil rising on the border of Chislot and Tabor, and it went out to Dabrat, and went to Yaphia. And from there it passed along on the east of Gat Hafer to Ita Kazin, and it went out to Rimon, and from there circled to Nea. And the border about it on the north side of Hanaton, and its outgoings were in the valley of Yiftael, and Kata, and Nahalal, and Shimron, and Idalah, and Bethlehem, and 12 cities with their villages. This is the inheritance of the children of Zebulun according to their families, these cities with their villages. The fourth lot came out to Issachar for the children of Issachar according to their families. And their border was Yezreel, and Chesulot, and Shunem, and Hepharaim, and Shion, and Anaharat, and Rabit, and Kishion, and Ebez, and Remet, and Enganim, and Enhada, and Beth Pazez. And the border met in Tabor, and Shahazimah, and Bet Shemesh, and the outgoings of their border were at Jordan, 16 cities with their villages. This is the inheritance of the tribe of the children of Issachar, according to their families, the cities and their villages. And the fifth lot went out for the tribe of the children of Asher, according to their families. And their border was Helkat, and Hali, and Beten, and Achshaph, and Alamalech, and Amad, and Mishael, and it met in Carmel westward, and in Shehor Libnat. And it turned towards the Soleil rising to Bat Dagan, and met in Zebulun, and in the valley of Yiftael, towards the north side of Bet Emek, and Niel, and it went out to Kabul on the left, and Hebron, and Rehob, and Hamon, and Cana to Great Zidon. And the border turned to Ramah, and to the fortress city of the rock, and the border turned to Hosa, and the outgoings thereof were to the sea from the lot of Achzib. Uma also, and Aphek, and Rehob, 22 cities with their villages. This is the inheritance of the tribe of the children of Asher, according to their families, these cities with their villages. The sixth lot came out to the children of Naphtali, for the children of Naphtali, according to their families. And their border was from Heleph, and Elon Bezanamnim, and Adami, and Nekeb, and Yabneel to Lakum, and its outgoings were at the Jordan. And the border turned westward to Aznot Tabor, and went out from there to Hukok, and met in Zebulun on the south, and met in Asher on the west, and in Yehuda at the Jordan towards the Soleil rising. And the fortress cities are Zidim, Zer, and Yama, and Hamat, Rakat, and Cheneret, and Adamah, and Haramah, and Hazor, and Kadesh, and Edrai, and Hazor, and Iron, and Migdal El Horem, and Bet Anat, and Bet Shemesh, 19 cities with their villages. This is the inheritance of the tribe of the children of Naphtali, according to their families, the cities and their villages. And the seventh lot came out for the tribe of the children of Dan, according to their families. And the border of their inheritance was Zorah, and Eshtaol, and Ir Shemesh, and Shealbin, and Ayalon, and Itla, and Elon, and Timnatah, and Ekron, and Eltekeh, and Gibeton, and Balat, and Yehud, and Benek Barak, and Gat Rimon, and Me Yakon, and Rakon, with the border opposite Yopa. And the border of the children of Dan went out with them from them, and the children of Dan went out and fought against Leshem, and took it, and smote it with the edge of the sword, and possessed it, and dwelt in it, and called Leshem Dan after the name of Dan their father. This is the inheritance of the children. This is the inheritance of the tribe of the children of Dan, according to their families, these cities with their villages. And they made an end of dividing the land for inheritance by its borders. The children of Israel gave an inheritance to Yehoshua the son of Nun amongst them. According to the word of Elohim, they gave him the city which he asked, Timnah Serah in Mount Ephraim, and he built the city and dwelt in it. These are the inheritances which Eleazar the priest, and Yehoshua the son of Nun, and the heads of the houses of the fathers of the tribes of the children of Israel, divided for an inheritance by lot in Shiloh, before Elohim at the entrance of the tent of meeting, and they made an end of dividing the land. And Elohim spoke to Yehoshua, saying, Speak to the children of Israel, saying, Prepare for your cities a refuge, of which I spoke to you through Moshe, to which a slayer that kills any person unawares unwittingly shall flee, and they shall be for you as a refuge from the avenger of blood. And he shall flee to one of those cities, and he shall stand at the entrance of the gate of the city, and shall declare his cause in the ears of the elders of that city. They shall take him into the city to them, and give him a place, and he shall dwell amongst them. And if the avenger of blood pursues him, and they shall not deliver the slayer, then they shall not deliver the slayer into his hand, because he smote his neighbor unwittingly, and did not hate him from before. And he shall dwell in that city until he stand before the tribunal for judgment, until the death of the high priest. That shall be in those days. Then shall the slayer return, and come to his own city, and to his own house, to the city from which he fled. And they set apart Kadesh in Galilee, Mount Naphtali, and Shechem in Mount Ephraim, and Kiryat Arba, which is Hebron, in the mountain of Yehuda. And on the other side of the Jordan at Yericho, eastward, they had assigned Bezer in the wilderness upon the plain out of the tribe of Reuben, and Ramot in Gilead out of the tribe of Gad, and Golan in Bashan out of the tribe of Manasseh. These were the cities set apart for all the children of Israel, and for the stranger that sojourns amongst them, that whosoever kills any person unawares might flee there, and not die by the hand of the avenger of blood until he stood before the tribunal. And the heads of the Pharaoh's houses of the Levites approached Eleazar the priest and Yehoshua the son of Nun, and the heads of the Pharaoh's houses of the tribes of the children of Israel. And they spoke to them in Shiloh in the land of Canaan, saying, Elohim commanded through Moshe to give us cities to dwell in, and the open land around them for our cattle. And the children of Israel gave to the Levites from their inheritance, according to the commandment of Elohim, these cities and the open land around them. And the lot went out for the families of the Kohathites, and the children of Aaron, the priest, who were of the Levites, had by lot from the tribe of Yehuda, and from the tribe of Shimon, and from the tribe of Benjamin 13 cities. And the rest of the children of Kohath had by lot 10 cities from the families of the tribe of Ephraim, and from the tribe of Dan, and from the half-tribe of Manasseh. And the children of Gershon had by lot from the families of the tribe of Issachar, and from the tribe of Asher, and from the tribe of Naphtali, and from the half-tribe of Manasseh in Bashan 13 cities. For the children of Merari, according to their families, there were 12 cities from the tribe of Reuben, and from the tribe of Gad, and from the tribe of Zebulun. And the children of Israel gave to the Levites by lot these cities with the open land around them, as Elohim had commanded through Moshe. And they gave from the tribe of the children of Yehuda, and from the tribe of the children of Shimon, these cities that will be mentioned by name. And it was for the children of Aaron, of the families of the Kohathites, of the children of Levi, for theirs was the first lot. And they gave them the city of Arba, far of the Anak giants, which is in Hebron, in the hill country of Yehuda, and the open land around it. And the fields of the city and its villages they gave to Caleb the son of Jephunneh in his possession. And to the children of Aaron the priest they gave the city of refuge for the slayer Hebron, and the open land around it, and Libnah, and the open land around it, and Yatir with the open land around it, and Eshtemoa with the open land around it, and Holon with the open land around it, and Debir with the open land around it, and Ain with the open land around it, and Utah with the open land around it, and Bet Shemesh with the open land around it, 9 cities from these 2 tribes. And from the tribe of Benjamin, Gibeon and the open land around it, Geba with the open land around it, Anatot with the open land around it, and Almon with the open land around it, 4 cities. All the cities of the children of Aaron the priests were 13 cities, and the open land around them. And to the families of the children of Kohath, the Levites who remained of the children of Kohath, the cities of their lot were from the tribe of Ephraim. And they gave them the city of refuge for the slayer Shechem with the open land around it, in the hill country of Ephraim, and Gezer with the open land around it, and Gibzaim with the open land around it, and Bet Horon with the open land around it, 4 cities. And from the tribe of Dan, Eltek and the open land around it, Gibeton with the open land around it, Ayalon and the open land around it, Gat Rimon with the open land around it, 4 cities. And from the half tribe of Manasseh, Tanakh and the open land around it, and Gat Rimon and the open land around it, 2 cities. And all the cities of the open land and the open land around them for the families of Kohath that remained were 10. And to the children of Gershon, all the families of the Levites was given from the half tribe of Manasseh the city of refuge for the slayer Golan in Bashan, and the open land around it, and Beshtera with the open land around it, 2 cities. And from the tribe of Issachar, Kishion and the open land around it, and Dobrat and the open land around it, Yarmut and the open land around it, En Ganim and the open land around it, 4 cities. And from the tribe of Asher, Mishal and the open land around it, Abdon and the open land around it, Helkat and the open land around it, Rehob and with the open land around it, 4 cities. And from the tribe of Naphtali, the city of refuge of the slayer, Kadesh in Galilee and the open land around it, and Hamodor with the open land around it, and Kartan with the open land around it, 3 cities. All the cities of the Gershonites, according to their families, were 13 cities with the open land around them. And to the families of the children of Merari, the rest of the Levites, was given from the tribe of Zebulun, Yokneam and the open land around it, Karta with the open land around it, Dimnah with the open land around it, Nahalal and the open land around it, 4 cities. And from the tribe of Gad, the city of refuge for the slayer, Ramot and Gilead with the open land around it, and Mahanaim with the open land around it, Heshbon with the open land around it, Yazer with the open land around it, 4 cities in all. All these cities were for the children of Merari according to their families. Those who remained are the families of the Levites, and their lot was 12 cities. All the cities of the Levites in the midst of the possession of the children of Israel were 48 cities with the open land around them. These cities shall be to the Levites, each city and its open land around. Thus shall it be for all these cities. And Elohim gave to Israel the entire land that Elohim swore to give to their fathers, and they inherited and dwelt in it. And Elohim gave them rest from about, according to all that Elohim swore to their fathers. And no man of all their enemies stood before them. Elohim delivered all their enemies into their hand. Not a thing was lacking from all the benevolent things that Elohim spoke to the house of Israel. All came to pass. Alhamdulillah, Ar-Rahmani Ar-Rahim, Allah Wabha. Dao ke, Dao fei cheng, Dao min ke, min fei cheng, min Jah Rastafari. Deus nos aqui essential Santa Vakita nomen tu, Vahegu Sanam. Baruch Ata Elohim, Elohim melech haolam, asher kasanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivonu l'sok b'revai Torah. Amen. Baruch Ata Elohim, Elohim melech haolam, barei periyagafem. Amen. Kyrie eleison, sivamastu savejagatehi, sabe sata bhavantu sukhitata. Vagabiyam. Aquaba, upendo naamanim, fikiri nesalami, chintadam permen, libavmem, umanjika. Ubuntu shabana fakitka. Sheshem. Como Senira, Domo Arigato, Pedama Yellow Wagato, Tokodoku Shingun, Gomenagan. God, we thank you for all that you bless us. Ata Jamia Yat Afanami. Adom, Aho, Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Amen. All thanks and praise to the Most High, Elohim. Respect and honor to all our ancestors, all our prophets, all our sages, past and present, known and unknown. Respect and honor to His Majesty, Haile Selassie I, and Her Majesty Waizarumanan. Blessed love and peace in Rastafari, one perfect love.